Imagine living in a world where every bite of food or sip of a drink can induce panic, where eating becomes a small exercise in trust because the wrong meal could literally be your last. That's the world of the Apothecary Diaries, and food gives us a window into it. But this isn't the only show where food gives us unique insight into the world. In Gachiakuta, food tells us how people survive in a world covered in trash. In Frieren, food tells us whether a town is thriving or being torn apart by demons. And sometimes, it can tell us who a character really is. Because a simple bowl of soup can tell you just as much about a world as any map, magic system, or page of lore. And sometimes you can reconstruct an entire world from what's sitting on the plate. Let's explore how. Food is the lifeline of every world and culture. Without food, nothing exists. So if the worlds in fiction are to be believable, they need to have food. But how does food exist in this world? Does the environment support it? Is it a challenge to find or not? How is food prepared and how is it stored? Gachiakuta explores this concept quite well. It's a world covered in trash and for the most part is dry, barren and toxic. Yet Rudo's first meal is a burger. So how does that work? And where is this food coming from? The anime doesn't explicitly show us the details, so we have to read between the lines. In Rudo's welcome party, we see the cleaners eat things like fries, pizza and spaghetti. And at first glance, that's pretty normal looking food, but they have something in common. They are mostly processed foods. And in a world that's unpredictable, it makes a lot of sense. Considering the nature of the ground, processed foods are consistent with the toxic and somewhat unpredictable environment. Obviously, there's more to food on the ground than what we see in that scene. There are literally salads which I can't explain away as being processed. But I think it ultimately paints a picture of how a harsh environment shapes what grows and eventually what is abundant and what isn't. Now contrast this with Frieren. Where the environment on the ground was harsh, the environment in Frieren is for the most part peaceful and fruitful. As such, their food is primarily whole food. And we see this in thriving farms. Even the wild is brimming with enough food for foraging. But whether the staples are whole foods or processed foods, an interesting question that arises is, when an environment makes food difficult to obtain, what does the society do about it? In Gachiakuta, for example, the people on the ground adapt to combat food scarcity. An interesting way it does this is through a group of givers called the Viandas. They are a group of givers specialized in cooking. Their abilities make things like sweets much more easily accessible. And even where the environment has altered aspects of their fauna, they've adapted. We see weird-looking meat on their plates that are clearly delicacies in their world. And this is a testament to the adaptability of the people on the ground. They literally have a group of people specialized to solve the food problems of the environment. And they have developed the skills to make delicacies out of environmental anomalies. But sometimes food preparation doesn't solve scarcity. It creates distance, and we see this in the Apothecary Diaries. In the Rhea Palace, food often passes through many hands, a number of cooks, servants, ladies-in-waiting, before it eventually reaches a consort. The nobles don't handle food in its raw state or participate in the preparation. This fuels their suspicion but also supports their ignorance. In the episode where Lady Li Hua is sick, Mao Mao tries preparing food for her. She carefully selected dishes that were suitable for someone who was sick. But the ladies-in-waiting repeatedly rejected those foods because they weren't the rich or quality foods that they were used to. In this situation, Mao Mao is thinking like an apothecary. Food is a tool for healing, but these ladies are thinking like nobles who believe that food shows their status. Ultimately, environments affect what people eat, how they prepare food, and even the distance or scarcity surrounding it. But what if the thing that determines who eats isn't the land, but the society? Even when the environment is yielding, security, politics, and war can greatly affect whether people starve or thrive. We had looked at how the environment in the world of Frieren, for the most part, produces fresh food. However, there are external factors that affect their food supply. In one scene, Stark makes an offhand comment. You can tell if a town is peaceful by how good the food is. It's a comment that goes over your head until the story spends several episodes proving him right. We see the party have nothing but dry, hard bread for a few episodes. We learn that food isn't as abundant in some of the regions of the northern lands because of the colder weather. But when demons attack, villages are brought to the ground. Farms are left unattended since the people are busy rebuilding, moving, or tending to their injured. But it gets worse if the demons are rampant. Roads become unsafe. Merchants can't travel to bring in supplies. That's why Stark can look at a meal and tell whether a town is peaceful or not. Gachiakuta gives us a different version of the same problem. The ground is constantly threatened by falling trash and trash storms. If the environment is constantly being disrupted, why hasn't their food system collapsed? The anime doesn't give us a clear answer, but despite these storms, the people on the ground are still eating and thriving, which suggests that they've built systems around the environment and learned to adapt. The external threats in Frieren affect the people, which in turn affects the food, and in Gachiakuta, the reverse is true. The external elements affects the food, which in turn affects the people. But in the Apothecary Diaries, the external factors are the economy. Inside the Rhea Palace, food is abundant, such that the danger is eating the wrong thing. Outside those walls, the problem is often not having enough to eat at all. So at the core of this world, the real fear surrounding food is not knowing the intentions of those who handled the food for the aristocracy, and not having enough for the common folk. The irony. Sometimes, even in lands where food exists in plenty, people experience it very differently. That's where things like social class come into play. In many worlds, food is a way for people to bond. In Frieren, sharing a meal is simple. It isn't hindered by social rank, even when the party sits with nobles. But step into the world of the Apothecary Diaries, and the picture is very different. At the Rhea Palace, the consorts, emperor, and even Jinshi eat while their attendants stand by. Meals become another way to demonstrate and enforce hierarchy. But a scene that turns this concept on its head is when Jinshi and Maoma are walking through the pleasure district in disguise. For the first time, we see the limitations that come with being nobility. Maoma is disguised as the daughter of a noble. She stops to look at some radishes which she thought would make a good stew for her dad. And Jinka, stops her because someone of her rank wouldn't be the one to buy the radishes in the first place. And for the first time, we get a real glimpse at just how suffocating the rules of etiquette surrounding nobility can be. Even simple tasks like choosing veggies for your supper are things that you can't do freely, which means the nobles are both physically and socially removed from their food. But in contrast, we also see Mau eat street food, and she invites Jinshi to join her. As they eat the meat skewers, there's no need for food tasters or formality. They share the meal as equals. If you zoom out, food can reveal an entire society. But zoom in and it will reveal the people living within it. In Gachiakuta, food was the lens used to zoom in on Arka's Kovas. He is mysterious even to his own subordinates. Even Rudo was warned not to ask about his vital instrument because no one knew what it was. So the first insight we get about him is when a raider asks the most mundane things about him: his age, what he does in his spare time, what he likes to eat. We learn that he likes sweet stuff. This detail sounds completely mundane, but it's actually revealing. Kovas has managed to keep his subordinates from knowing anything about him, yet a few harmless questions were enough to reveal something about the man beneath the mystery. And that tells us something important. Sometimes the details that seem least significant are the ones that reveal the most. But food isn't just a lens into character traits, it can sometimes reveal the inner workings of the body. In the Apothecary Diaries, food is a tool for expanding on the medical knowledge of the world and giving its characters depth. We learn, for example, that Lishu, who initially seemed like a spoiled brat and a picky eater, actually has some serious allergies. And where food reveals Lishu's health issues, it reveals Kuonen's emotional history. He was an official known for eating nothing but sweets. While it's a running joke among his subordinates, it turns out it was actually a condition he developed after the loss of his family. His grief completely changed his food palate, such that he couldn't taste salt. We look for world building in maps, magic systems, and pages of lore, but sometimes it's sitting right there on the table. A meal can tell us whether a land is thriving or struggling, whether a society is stable or falling apart, who has the power and who doesn't, and sometimes who the people are. Food doesn't announce any of this. You just have to pay attention to whatever is on the plate. This is what I love about looking at the details hiding in the margins, because it's some of the smallest details that tell us the biggest stories. Is there a food detail that ever changed how you saw a show? I'd love to hear it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this analysis, share it with others so that the video can reach more people. Subscribe for more deep dives, and if you have time for another one, YouTube thinks you should watch this one next. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!